What is the mercy seat in the Ark of the Covenant that the Israelites were carrying around? They had put the 10 Commandments inside, right? There was also Aaron's rod that budded. There was also the pot of manna. And then there was a lid on that thing. There was the cover. And that cover is what they called the mercy seat. Now, it wasn't a seat as in a chair that somebody would sit on, right? Nobody's supposed to touch that. It's like, what's the seat of government? What's the seat of the government of the United States, right? In Washington, D.C. The seat of the government of California is in Sacramento, right? It's not that it's a chair. It's like the center of this thing.
We have a saying in English that says the seat of my emotions, my heart, right? I think the seat, it's the central place where decision, it's the seat of emotions, right? Yes. That sort of seat, not a seat where you put your butt on. It's not that kind of seat, right?
Exactly.
No one sits on Washington, D.C., right? That's not how it works.
So here's the thing, this mercy seat, right? So what's up with this? So there is the Hebrew word for it, right? It is kaporeth. Mm-hmm. You guys can look that up if you want to. You can just take my word for it. It's really not that important. But here's the important thing, that there was this idea that this mercy seat is called kaporeth because it's a cover, right? That it's a covering, that it's covering the law so that you can be right on the outside of it and be safe from the condemnation of the law, or that it's covering you so that your whatever filthiness and wickedness you might have is being covered by this mercy seat so that you don't get condemned by the law. However, more modern scholarship is saying that it's actually related to the root word kippur, which doesn't mean covering. It means more like cleansing or purging. We have heard many times of Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement. And this is the day that the sanctuary was going to be cleansed. Not just the sanctuary, but the whole Israelite community, the people were going to be cleansed. That's the day that they're going to be cleansed. This mercy seat, the lid, is the place of cleansing, not just covering. It's certainly covering some things, but more importantly, is a place of cleansing or purging. Because if there's some dirt, well, it needs to be taken care of. It needs to be taken away. It needs to be washed away. And that's where it gets washed away. And here in Romans chapter 3, we have here that Jesus is the hilasterion. The Greek word for mercy seat is hilasterion. Jesus is the mercy seat. He is the one where all of this cleansing happens. Just remember, it's not just a covering like, I'm covering God so that the people can be saved, or I'm covering the people so that the people can be saved from God. But there's actually a cleansing happening here. There is, in this whole process of redemption, in this process of justification, it's not just we're being declared to be clean. We are actually being cleaned. We're not just being declared as redeemed, we are actually being redeemed, right? I mean, what point would it be if somebody went and let's say you were a slave and somebody paid your redemption price, right? And then everybody agrees, all right, well, we're going to call you redeemed, but you go out there and keep on working. Right? No.
You're still a slave. You've been redeemed, but you're still a slave.
Right. That is pointless. That is worthless to be called something that you are not. That's just a lie. That's what that is, right? And here's the thing. God is so powerful. This is why he cannot lie, because when he says something, it becomes true. Right? Yeah. And when he said, I have redeemed you, that was also true.
No, I love that. And I think it's so important, especially in our faith community. And you and I are speaking to an audience because we are the audience that we're speaking to, right? And so there has always been this idea, like you said earlier, that there's this sort of there's a forensic nature to justification. We're declared to be in the right? Some people have called this, some people who attack our position call it legal fiction. Like, how can God say something? And just because it says something doesn't mean that it's true. However, as you and I both pointed out, when God speaks, it does align with reality, right? So it is true. But I think it's so instructive and so important to know that this is not just a legal declaration. It's not just forensic. It's not just a declaration. This, which would you think from covering, but this idea that it's actually cleansing aligns with what Jesus used to say. I've come to save people from their sins, right? There's this line in Isaiah about cleanse me and I'll be white as snow. Purge me and I'll be white like hyssop. There's always in the Bible, not just the declaration that you are righteous by faith, but also this idea that we're becoming a new creation, that the old is passing away, not in a nominal sense, but an actual sense, right? The old is passing away. The old John is dead, right? That is such an important construct for us to understand that in Christ, we are not just declared righteous, but we are being made new, right? We are being cleansed, right? And then I would think to myself, when our faith community loves Daniel talking about, in 2,300 days, and then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. All of a sudden, we start thinking about maybe it doesn't mean what we actually thought it meant, right? Because one of the things I think about is that if cleansing occurred in the most holy place, John's nowhere in the holy place.
Right.
In the entire sanctuary process, nowhere near that place. So there's some cleansing going down. It doesn't have to do with me, right? I love Jesus as the Hilasterion because if you think about it, when God, in this sort of metaphor and analogy of Israel, was calling Israel out of bondage, Moses says to Pharaoh, what was the point of God's people coming out of Egypt? That they wanted so they could worship their God, so they could be with their God, right? When they get to the other sides of the promised land, they built him a sanctuary where this mercy seat is actually housed. What was the purpose? What was the express purpose of the sanctuary? That I may dwell among them. Exactly. So you have this idea of reconciliation. What was lost in the Garden of Eden is found again in Christ, right? This Paul calls it in 2 Corinthians 5, that we are ministers of the reconciliation that is found where? In Christ. So here you have Christ is literally the place where humanity and divinity is once again reconciled, because Jesus Christ became a member of the human race, lived, died, and rose again so that humanity and divinity could be together, to be reconciled. That's the object of the exercise. And Paul is saying here that Jesus is that reconciliation in the mercy seat. Fascinating and mind-blowing.